Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in tonight's Einstein Analytics video, we have yet another guest in the series. Tonight, I am joined by Kimberly Reyes. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Kimberly Reyes, and I've been working with Einstein Analytics for about 3 years now.
All right, and awesome. How did you get into analytics?
I started working for a new company that was just implementing it in its customer service organization, and they brought me on to help with some of the reporting and build dashboards. And so they're looking at all this data related to cases and surveys, and at the time, they had some dashboards built in the Classic Designer, and Flex was just coming out. So I was working with some existing dashboards in Classic, building some new ones in Flex, and after a few months, I was basically the sole dashboard designer for our department.
And just a little context, back in the day, we used to have what we called the Dashboard Designer, and then that was replaced by Flex, and then we renamed it that we called Flex, the Dashboard Designer, and we renamed the old designer to Classic. So you might know that that's going to end of life in July of this year, 2019, which it's a little sad for me to see it go. We used to do a lot of white box tricks with that, a lot of cool stuff that we could do with the UI, but Z-Index had to die. I'm definitely happier with the new designer, but it presents a very interesting snapshot in the history of analytics. So what was it actually like trying to both ramp up on the new technology while also transitioning between the old designer and the new designer and the nuances between them?
It definitely made me appreciate the features in the new designer a lot more than I would have if I started off on it. So I'd be making a new dashboard and doing some things in the UI that were really easy. And then someone would ask for an update on one of the old dashboards, and I'd have to go and just kind of slog through it and make most of the changes in the JSON because it just wasn't available in the UI, which didn't really bother me because I like coding, but it's just really different, and there's different tricks you have to know about, like you were talking about the z-axis and things. You would try to make something new, but it'd be hidden behind something else. You wouldn't be able to find it. Um, but yeah, I really liked the new one because I remember when compared tables first came out, that was just amazing. And it made so many more things possible that weren't available in Classic. And so seeing how many improvements they made for the new designer and all the things you can do with clicks not code was really great.
So, I mean, it looks like you got the hang of it well enough. I understand that this actually had a really positive impact for your role at your company. Is that correct?
Yeah, so within about a year of starting, I went from just creating the dashboards to actually doing more on the data set creation side, which allowed me to work with another department and get more involved in another software we use, which is Informatica, and we use that to maintain all of our data sets.
I understand that you guys were using Informatica pretty heavily, and at the time, the list of connectors is not what it is today. Now we've got a lot of different options for how we can integrate data, but around the time that we were transitioning to Flex, we only had middlewares like Informatica. I think we had MuleSoft and maybe one or two others. But can you talk about your thoughts on Informatica as a middleware for Einstein Analytics, the pros, the cons, and the gotcha?
Yeah, so I like Informatica. It connects to a lot of different systems and makes it fairly easy to join different data sets, do calculations, and then push straight into Einstein. What is a little bit of a gotcha is that you can't do real-time data as well, or near real-time data, because by the time you get the data out of a source system and then run the job in Informatica and then let the data refresh and wave, it takes a while. And so sometimes the users don't really like having something that we call an hourly refresh, but really it's like 2 hours old. And another thing on our side is we store a lot of our data in SQL, and the source systems push to there before we grab it from Informatica through Informatica. So that adds even more refresh time on. So sometimes it's hard because we we're trying to tell our users like, hey, use Wave, it's really great. You can do analysis, reporting, but when they want to do some of their more daily management tasks, we have dashboards for them, but it's hard to get them to understand when they should be using a dashboard versus when they just need to go to a source system if they want to see like up to the minute information. So Informatica is a great tool for pushing all the data in there in the way that we want it without having to manipulate too much once it actually gets into Wave, but it does come with those time lags.
And speaking of Informatica, I understand that you can do a lot of transformations on that end of it, but we additionally have data flows and recipes. What goes into the decision process for what transformations are done in Informatica versus what transformations are done in a data flow?
As of now, we really have just been doing everything on the Informatica side just for the sake of consistency more than anything else, because we're already combining so many things and linking across different data sets in there that if we did half of it in Informatica and then kind of moved over and used a recipe for another part, it might get confusing for if someone else picks this up later and starts doing the updates instead of me or any of my teammates. So that's our main thing, is just consistency. We might, if we start getting some new data sets that don't come out of SQL or one of those environments, maybe we'll start using more of the recipes, because I know there's a lot of functionality now that wasn't there when we first started building the data sets we're using now. But at this point, we've got kind of like a behemoth created where it's like cases joined to surveys, and we have the old data union with the new data, and we have to join these 4 data sets, and it's complicated to switch mediums once you've already invested a lot of time into fixing all the fields.
And every single project that I begin, I think this is going to be the time that I make a clean, efficient data flow with only 5 or 6 nodes. We all know how it actually ends up.
Yeah.
We move forward to today and we see all of these different connectors available. If you were to start over now, do you think you still would have gone that route?
Yeah, unfortunately we would have had to, because looking at the connectors that are available today, you're right, there's definitely a lot more than when we started, but like I was mentioning, my company uses SQL, but we use SQL Server Management Studio, not AWS, and right now the only connectors for SQL through Wave are AWS, so we can't use that, and that's most of our data. And we also use SAP, but the only SAP connector on Einstein Analytics right now is for HANA, and we aren't using HANA for a lot of our data, so we can't do that either. So yeah, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to go that route for everything, but it'd be great if we could get those connectors in, and then maybe it would be more realistic for us to start using like Wave's native data set creation tools.
And I am definitely on the list of people that would love to see if dataset utils were to one day get merged into the standard Salesforce data loader, or any option for some kind of on-prem. And I know this is something that the product team is aware of and they are considering it, but I have absolutely no insights into whether or not that is currently on the roadmap. Just saying, I wouldn't mind seeing it. But speaking of which, besides on-prem, or maybe including on-prem, what other connectors would you like to see?
We've got SQL data, we've got SAP data, and yeah, one of the things you were alluding to is flat file connectors. So if we could have a way to link in CSV files or text files and have it regularly pick up the file from a folder, either on a schedule or as a file shows up, those would be really big deals for us, because then we can link it to a lot of the other stuff that we're doing and with other processes that are refreshing. Even if the connector wasn't available directly in Wave, the flat file would allow us to still put that data in there.
So moving away from the roadmap conversation, let's get back to where you were and how things evolved. So when you were lead dashboard designer, how did you work with the different business units that you were involved with to get the job done? Because I understand it's not just about going out there and writing the code. That if anything is 30% at most. What was it like for you?
Yeah, we have my team actually has a Salesforce case queue that we use to handle reporting requests. So whenever the business wants something new on a dashboard or they want a completely new dashboard, they send an email, creates a case, we look at all the cases, and sometimes if they're asking for something really easy, like, hey, can you add this extra field to this values table, then I can just do it real quick and then email them back and say, all right, yep, it's updated. But sometimes when it's a bigger project or something completely new and I'm not really understanding what they're asking for, then we kick off with a meeting and figure out what all the requirements are, and I'll start building something, and hopefully we can do it just during the meeting. What I find is it's really easy when you're working with somebody live and in person. You can just show them how easy it is to just whip up a dashboard, create a lens, just say, oh, is this what you're looking for? And a lot of the time they'll just say, oh, yes, that's exactly what I need. You save it for them, you're completely done. But other times it's an entire dashboard for reporting on something new, and I'll get the requirements, go back, design something, and then either send them a link so that they can check it out on their own or schedule another meeting to see what else they need or if it's on the right track. And a lot of the times too, if what they're asking for requires like data changes, then it's something that'll take more than just the one meeting.
So I understand that as you guys expanded your footprint into Einstein Analytics, that you brought on an additional resource, and now you have a minion. What was it like actually bringing someone up in the tech and training them and showing them the rope?
Yeah, so I was like, for a couple years, I was the only Wave guru in my department. So every single one of those reporting requests came to me, which, you know, sometimes can get a little bit hard to handle. So we hired somebody else, and he started learning Wave and taking on all of the new reporting requests. So it was great to have somebody else who understood the software, what was going on, and who could also handle those meetings with the business and all the little things that they wanted. And so training was interesting because for me at least, I find the best way to start learning learning the software is just using it. And so, you know, I can, like, I would meet with him and show him the dashboards we have, and I can talk about like, oh, this is what the JSON is. This is where you have, you know, all the columns or whatever. And, you know, there's SACL and bindings, but until you start actually building dashboards and doing it yourself, it's not really going to click. So I was glad I was able to share some of the things that I had learned struggling through, like, oh, using bindings for the first time. And so I was able to give him some of the syntax that I was already using, and that way he wouldn't have to like go search around online, because sometimes it's just not really easy to find. But yeah, once he kind of just jumped in and started handling everything, he's basically got it all under control and is now everyone's point person for all the dashboards instead of me, which is nice.
So now that he's all trained up, how has your role transitioned?
So I'm doing more on the data set side now. So he'll take care of all of the reporting requests and the requirements gathering meetings and things like that. But at a certain point, they ask to see something that we just can't support with the data we currently have. So I'll either add a field we didn't have before, or if the team has created an entirely new process in Salesforce, we'll have to bring in a new object. So I'll work with the Salesforce admins that we have, figure out what they're doing, what kind of new data they have, create the data set, make sure all the data types line up, and then kind of throw it over to him. And at the beginning of projects like that, we'll work together to make sure, like, oh, they added a new field because they realized whatever, or, oh, hey, this checkbox, you know, it's a 0 or 1, can we make it true, false, like whatever the users need there at the beginning. But then I'll be able to make all those data changes and then let him handle all of the dashboarding and the layouts and working with the business. But it is nice because I still get to, I do like some of the, like the more complex, like working with SACWL and like doing some of the complicated things. So like like at times doing the data sets, I'll miss some of that. So whenever we get some kind of crazy requests, I still help out and give a second set of eyes, because when you're working with that many lines of code, it can get, it can become easy to make mistakes. So we'll do that together sometimes. So that's still fun.
So I got one final question before we wrap things up here. Could you give us some advice for someone who's just taking their first step into this space, and just any feedback for, that might help them out?
Yeah, so my advice is just to start using it. Like I mentioned, the way that I learn the best is just by doing. And there are trailheads out there that can teach you the basics and the difference between, dimensions and types of charts and all of the different terminology that you need to know. But once you know those general basics, then just go play around with it, see what kind of lenses and dashboards you can make. And if you're trying to do something and after a few tries it's not really working and you're about to get frustrated, I would say reach out to the success community. If you search in there, most of the time you'll find that someone has already had the problem that you're facing and the answer is already right there. So I would say go there, and if you can't find the answer, then everybody on the community is really supportive and helpful, and together you'll be able to figure it out for sure.
All right, why don't you close it out for us then?
If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.